The Gorosei, ladies and gentlemen, the 5 Elder Stars that are the supreme commanders of the world government, the Marines, the Cypher Pole, the Warlords, these are the guys that are at the top of it all. And would you believe that I actually have secret information that one of them is in fact an alien? No! You shouldn't believe that in the slightest, because it's not true. Aliens in One Piece, that's just ridiculous. Now, space pirates that are just happen to be anthropomorphic foxes, yeah, that's totally legit in One Piece, but aliens, way out there. Alright, so, Gorosei discussion. Now, I've already talked about these guys, before, but I was, sitting around the other day, and I was like, never actually made a video about the Gorosei. Probably should get on that. So, here it is. And really, in all honesty, we don't know much about them. We don't even know their freaking names. These are the 5 most powerful dudes that rule the entire world government, which, by the way, you could get a chick in there. Come on, Oda. Come on. Every single group, you at least throw in one token girl with huge bazongas. You got the Warlords, you have Boa Hancock. You have the Supernovas, you got Jewelry Bonnie. Yeah, the Gorosei, kind of a sausage fest. But yeah, we don't know any of their names, and they only show up in the series to kind of sit around in the same room around like a coffee table drinking tea and just talk about current events. But whenever they show up, that sounds boring, I know. Like, everyone's like, okay, they're just a bunch of old dudes sitting around and freaking talking about gossip in the world. But no, you don't understand. Like, every single time these dudes show up, the entire collective fandom is like, oh shit! It's on now! Freaking Gorosei, man! That's when you know, because it's not even like they show up at the end of every arc. Because Oda does this thing where he does like a wrap-up kind of thing, where after the end of an arc, he'll kind of like, alright, now let's take a look at what's going on in the rest of the world, as like a little slideshow for a chapter or two before we get into the next arc. The Gorosei don't even show up at the end of everything. I think it's only been like in the context of the story, in the present timeline of One Piece, I think they've only showed up 3 times at the end of an arc. They showed up after they were first introduced after Alabasta, after Crocodile was defeated, because that was a big blow. We just lost one of the Warlords, so that's why we introduced them. We got to see what they looked like, their designs and all, and I think that was the first time we even got, like, yeah, these are the guys that are ahead of the entire government. Now, by the way, some of you might already be commenting that the world nobles, the Tenryubito, are higher in power than the 5 Elder Stars. I'm gonna be getting to that in a second, so just hold off hold off the keyboard for a little bit. I will get to that, but in terms of like the ones that order everybody around, in terms of like the ones that are given that power, that's the Gorosei. Now, if the Tenryubito, if they kick and scream enough, then yes, they can make the Gorosei kind of do what they need to do, and the Gorosei's kind of secondary job, on top of running the entire government, is basically to keep the Tenryubito happy. So the relationship between the Tenryubito and the Gorosei is an interesting one. I'll get into that later. I just wanted to clarify something there. But yeah, they showed up after the defeat of Crocodile, so we got to see them there. That was also right before Doflamingo and Kuma were introduced. Actually, I think it was the exact same chapter. I think it was the same chapter we got Gorosei first introduction, and then the introduction of Doflamingo and Kuma. So that was a pretty big chapter. The next time we see them, I believe, is right after the events of Marineford. I might be wrong on that. There might have been another one, because I feel like there might have been an appearance by them when Marineford was gearing up, or like right after Enies Lobby or Impel Down. But the next time I remember seeing them was right before the time skip. Right before we went on a 2-year, time skip, we had the Gorosei one more time, and they were basically sitting around talking about the events of the war, and now that Blackbeard is in power, he has all this strength, he's got the Yami Yami Nomi, he's got the Gura Gura Nomi, they were going over our options and everything, okay, and then there's Luffy, of course, and that's all a problem. And then the first time we see them after the time skip, the only time we've seen them after the time skip, was after the events of Dressrosa. Right as Dressrosa was wrapping up, we got to see them actually in a meeting with Akainu. He shows up being the new fleet admiral, and this is something interesting, because we're assuming that Sengoku, when he was the fleet admiral, he kind of had an idea on how this whole relationship worked between the Marines and the rest of the world government and the Gorosei, and he understood how all this worked. Not with Sakazuki, not with Akainu. Akainu basically just barges in and is like, how the hell could you allow Doflamingo to, why would you protect him? Why would you have this big elaborate thing with the newspapers pretending that he resigned and then cover it all up? Like, what is wrong with you people? And then we have this argument between the two where they basically just start throwing, like, it's like, yeah, Sakazuki, what about Aokiji? What about Kuzan? You let him leave, and now he's joining up with Blackbeard, and Sakazuki's like, don't start that shit, man. He left the Marines. He could do whatever he wants. We're talking about this. And then that's when Sakazuki accuses the Five of being just the puppets of the Tenryubito, and it was not the relationship between the two is getting kind of gritty, so to speak. But that was the only 3 times they've appeared so far, all in the same room. We've seen them in flashbacks and stuff like that, but in terms of present storylines, same room, haven't left Marie Joie, and we don't really even know much more about them beyond just the topics they've discussed, except their current status. So the way that the world government shakes down is, of course, you have the 3 main branches. You have the Marines, which serves as the military. It also serves, as the Gorosei put it themselves, the public face of the world government. That's why the Gorosei are always very freaking careful to make sure the Marines are squeaky clean, because that's the part that the citizens always view, like, the Marines, they're so stalwart and full of justice, and they're defending the seas from the pirates' scourge. So you gotta make sure they look cool. Then you have the Cipher Pole, the intelligence. You don't have to worry about them looking so cool. Those are those who run in the shadows, so to speak. Then you have the warlords, the 7 pirates that are basically given license to be privateers that are on the government payroll, essentially. Then above them, you got Kong, who is essentially a mediator between the 3 branches and the Gorosei themselves. Kong can order around the Cipher Poles, the warlords, the Marines, as he sees fit. It's more about delegation of power, but there is a chain of command. For the most part, Sakazuki can make any decisions he chooses about the Marines, unless it's something like like if Sakazuki wanted to mobilize the entire freaking Marines to go attack Kaido's territory, Kong would probably step in and be like, okay, I can't let you do that. Or likewise, if Kong decided to mobilize all of Cipher Pole, all of the warlords, and all of the Marines to go attack Kaido's territory, which that might actually work, but if that was the case, the Gorosei would step in and be like, no, you can't do that. So that's the case. The Gorosei, though, is something more than just the head of the Marine Cipher Pole and the warlords, just those 3 specific powers. The Gorosei are in charge of a government. Alright, and there's more to a government than just the military or the spy network. You got basically an economy to run. You have a global economy to run. You got freaking revolutionaries trying to overthrow this government. You got multiple kingdoms with all different types of kind of governments that rule these individual kingdoms. Some are democracies, like Water 7 has a mayor that's like elected. Then you have monarchies that are like Alabasta and Dressrosa that have kings that rule over it. But then you have the world government that's ruled by an oligarchy, a small group of people, which is the Gorosei, that have to run all of this. So these guys have a lot more on their table. Maybe that's the reason we don't see them all too much, because a lot of times they're just discussing things that's really boring, because we usually see them when they're discussing warlords or Yonko or the Straw Hats or, Blackbeard and his pirate crew gaining power as a Yonko. Probably most of the time they're sitting around just being like, alright, so, yeah, it seems like the taxes in this region are lagging behind. We maybe need to figure out this. Alright, well, how about we get Cipher Pole 7 to go and check out that area for a possible incursion in the government? Let's back this revolution over here, so that means that revolution doesn't get joined up with Dragon's revolution. Probably a lot more boring political talk going on in the Gorosei's office, which I have to question that they just, I guess, live in the main, like, they're the most, like, 5 the most important people in the world. They probably wouldn't step out of Marie Joie unless it was, like, being burnt to the ground. That's probably the only only time unless they were forced to leave. Let's go and talk about them individually. I've been kind of referencing them as a collective, but that's really because they are, and that might be actually what Oda might be going for. Like, do not think of the Gorosei as, like, separate people, each with different intentions, each with, like, unique abilities of their own, each with, like, this is the nice Gorosei, or this is the mean Gorosei, or this is the Gorosei that's trying to take out all the other Gorosei and become the supreme leader. Don't think of them like that. At least not yet. Think of them as just a collective force at this point. And like I said, we don't know any of their names, so just to make it simple for me to refer to them, which, you know, you're gonna know which one I'm talking about, I'm gonna have to give them little nicknames here, so here we go. The first one is the easiest. He's the oldest looking one, bald guy, glasses, only one in the entire group that doesn't have facial hair, wearing different clothing than the others. All of the Gorosei seem to be rocking the classic Tekking look, meaning black suit, white dress shirt, black tie, the standard attire that most of the government officials wear, except for this dude. And also, he's wielding a sword. Is the sword the legendary Shodai Katetsu? Because it's very remarkably similar to Zoro's Sandai Katetsu. That's not even a thing in the anime either. In the manga, it looks very identical. The guard is the same. The way the grip is like separated by that little section there. It seems very similar to a Katetsu blade. I'm gonna be doing a whole video on Katetsu blades coming up, actually, so don't have to go into reference that here, but he seems to be the oldest one, and because of his appearance to Mahatma Gandhi, I'm gonna refer to him as Samurai Gandhi, because that just sounds awesome. Next up, we have this guy, tall dude, long white flowing hair, mustache beard combo. Honestly, the first time I saw an image of this guy, I thought he was like Gonfal's older brother, you know, the previous god of Skypiea. You can kind of see the resemblance, at least with the beard, so I'm just gonna call him Gonfal's brother. Next up, we have this dude with the scar and the dreadlocks and the cap. Can't really think of anything super clever for this guy, but considering he's got dreadlocks, I guess I'll just call him Judge Dreadlocks. That's the most clever thing I could come up with, sorry. Next up is this guy who, let's be honest here, probably rivals Whitebeard for the single most epic stash in the entire One Piece manga. It is truly incredible. Also kind of rivals Toppo from Dragon Ball Super. Like, he's getting up there. Like, it's something that takes at least probably no less than 6 hours every morning to style this stash, right? But probably one of the other very distinguishing characteristics about him is the birthmark up on his forehead here, which I think Oda directly ripped from the previous Soviet Union Prime Minister Mikhail Gorbachev. So for that reason, I'm just gonna call him Gorbachev. And then lastly, we have apparently the youngest of the Gorosei, this dude. This dude is actually, he doesn't have gray hair, so that already sets him apart from the other ones. He has blonde hair, he's got a beard, you know, his hair seems to be cut a normal length, nothing crazy going on up there. Seems to be the most muscular out of all of them. There was actually a lot of theories for a while that he was going to be related to Sanji, especially back when we knew Sanji was like royalty. We thought maybe this guy was related to him. Now, we already know Sanji's father, of course, is Judge, or Judgy, but I'm gonna go with calling this dude Sanji's uncle, just because, to pay homage to that theory that a lot of people had. And that's the Gorosei. Now, in terms of what they've each done, like, individually, like I said, they stay in the same room all the time, 100% of the time, so it's really more of a contest of just which ones have talked the most. But they've each had their little discussions. Like, for instance, Gonfal's brother was the one that talked to Professor Clover back during the O'Hara incident. Because Professor Clover was like, let me speak to the Gorosei, and then, you know, Spondine set them up, and Clover was talking about the existence of the ancient kingdom, and you know, Gonfal's brother was the one listening to all of that and talking about, you know, what they know and all that stuff. And then it was actually Sanji's uncle was the one that actually gave the order to, you know, kill Professor Clover before he could even speak the ancient kingdom's name. So, I mean, right away, that gives you the level of power they have. Like, just at a whim, they could be like, kill that guy, pfft, done. that's the level of power they have. Samurai Gandhi talked a lot about the Will of D and the danger that initial poses in the world, and how it's becoming more and more into the private sector. Like, people are starting to see a little bit more about this D popping up, and it's kind of worrisome. Judge Dreadlock talked a lot in their first introduction. He talked a lot about how Garp and Luffy were related and what was going on with that. Then we have Gorbachev, who spoke. He was the one that, like, was having that back and forth with Sakazuki. You know, like, oh, you let Kuzan leave, and now he joined up with Blackbeard. You know, he was the one of all that stuff. Seemed to have been sporting a beard, but in the anime, and then lost it later on. That was kind of weird. He already has the epic stash. Why did you bother giving him a beard? But whatever. After the time skip, the animators decided to get rid of it. That was kind of strange. But anyway, yeah. So that's really all they've done. Like, they haven't actually physically done anything. But we can assume, like, their presence is always felt. Every time the Marines make a major play, it's always at the behest of the Gorosei. They're the ones that have to give the go-ahead. If the Gorosei don't want the Marines to do it, then they wouldn't be doing it. So even though we didn't really see them all that much in Marineford, you know that they were behind the scenes making, like, okay, this battle's gonna happen, Whitebeard's gonna show up, we have to be ready, you know, we have to make sure that our units are positioned and all that stuff. I mean, yeah, Sengoku was the one that actually dealt with the commanding of the battle, but the Gorosei were definitely privy to all this information and probably had a say in how they were gonna set this up. Now let me talk about the relationship between the World Nobles, the Tenryubito, the Celestial Dragons, and the Gorosei, the 5 Elder Stars. You know, last time I checked, stars were higher up than dragons. Well, I guess they're the celestial dragons, so I guess it implies that they're in, like, they're in heaven, they're in the next dimension, and the Gorosei are just, like, the highest in our dimension or something like that. I don't know. Okay. So there's some discussion here. First thing is this. Are the Gorosei world nobles? Fair question. I don't think they are, and the reason I don't think they are is this. For one thing, the way they dress. From what we've seen, the world nobles always seem to be dressing in a very particular way, and I'm not even talking about whenever they were, like, at Sabaody, and they had, like, the bubble dome and, like, the vacuum suit to not dare to breathe in the air of the commoner. Even when they're living in Marijois, which is their homeland, which is the place where all the nobles live, they walk around without their domes on. We saw from, you know, Don Quixote homing and his family and all the other ones, they dress in a very particular fashion, even in Marijois. The Gorosei do not dress as such. None of them do. Even Samurai Gandhi with his outfit doesn't really resemble the way that homing dressed in his family. Don't really see that there. Also, it really does seem that the One Piece world sets up the Tenryubito as just nobles in the strictest sense of they are the descendants of the ones that created the world government. They serve as sort of a symbol, and they do have power. We couldn't have the world government and say that they don't have power. That really wouldn't make a lot of sense. But they're not really decision makers. You don't really think that Charlos would be hanging out in board meetings talking about current political events in the world. Not the kind of guy. They really seem to be just kind of like chilling out in their castles, drinking a shit ton of wine, having the finest meals prepared for them, bossing around their servants, riding around on their slaves, making life basically miserable for everybody that works under them, and just being drunk with power. Some of them seem to be a little bit more level-headed, like Charlos's father, seem to be a little bit more understanding of how the world really works. But they really just seem to be basking in luxury and just the fact that they can go anywhere, do anything because their families, just because arbitrarily, basically, because, you know, their great grandfather founded a freaking, you know, part of the world government, served as one of the 20 kings. Therefore, they have all this awesome power in the world. Makes a lot of sense, really. But that doesn't mean they're going to be the most intelligent. That doesn't mean that they know, like they instinctually know how to run a government. Thinking it makes more sense for the Gorosei to be the ones that were hired, so to speak, by the Tenryubito because the Tenryubito really didn't want the job themselves. Or because they were at least smart enough to understand that they weren't going to be the ones to or maybe they're just lazy. Maybe they're just like, you know what? We don't want to do this. We're the ones that are supposed to reap the rewards of our forefathers. We're not the ones that are supposed to be like, I don't want to work. I don't want a freaking desk job. I don't want to hang around in board meetings all day talking about the Yonko. Screw that. I want to chill out in my freaking awesome immaculate palace with my harem with like 30 girls that I could literally order to have sex with me anytime, anywhere, possibly at all the same time. I'm not going to hang out in your freaking room sipping tea talking about the current situation with Blackbeard. Screw that. This doesn't seem to be very, thing with them. However, this is the problem. Whenever the Tenryubito throw a tantrum and they want something done, even if it's something that might actually cause a problem in the world, the Gorosei cannot just ignore them. They are basically the puppets, and that's another reason I don't think that they are truly, they are world nobles themselves. Why else would Sakazuki refer to them as the puppets of the world nobles if they were themselves world nobles? But that raises some questions in and of itself. If they are not world nobles, where did they come from? Doesn't seem to be like the kind of thing that you would just recruit members of the Gorosei in the world. They are connected in some way to the world government. Perhaps maybe, think of it this way, maybe the 20 families that started the world government, maybe they had advisors. Because every good king needs an advisor, right? Maybe the Gorosei are the descendants of the advisors. Something along those lines, because they obviously were not recruited from, like, just going around the world and getting people to come into the government. That doesn't really make a lot of sense considering they run the whole thing. You want to make damn skippy sure that the ones that you want to be Gorosei, the ones you hire at this position, if this truly is a position you could be hired for, it might work in a similar way with the Tenryubito. It might be like a hereditary thing, the son of a Gorosei becomes the next Gorosei, whatever, who knows. But you want to make damn sure that they're on your side. They're on the side of the Tenryubito because they're going to be the ones running your government for all intents and purposes. So yeah, that might be the case there. They might be the descendants of the advisors or some other family line that were basically the ones that were keeping the government, as powerful as it was throughout the centuries. Keep in mind, world government's been around for 800 years, right at the tail end of the Void Century. You can't keep something like that going for so long without knowing at least what you're doing, And also, by the way, geography is everything. Don't think I forgot about that, but you still need to know what you're doing. The cogs in the machine have to be shined and oiled and ready to go. It seems like if the Tenryubito themselves were the ones that were in charge of everything, the gears would get pretty rusty pretty quick, and things would kind of fall apart, or there might be some type of coup, if that was the case. But it's a shaky relationship, to say the least, and it did seem like, the Gorosei, at least the way Sakazuki put it, like, you're just puppets, and it's not like the Gorosei really denied that fact. It's not like they were like, we are not puppets, shut up! It's a very kind of iffy situation here between the way that they go about it. For instance, if a Tenryubito got really pissy about a Yonko and barged into the Gorosei's chamber and like, I want you to go and attack that Big Mom and wipe her off the face of the earth. You're sending the entire Marines to do it right now. The Gorosei cannot just be like, go back to your room, Charlos. They can't be like Tywin Lannister sending Joffrey back to his bedchamber. They have to be like, okay, we will definitely handle that. They have to kind of like, oh crap, God damn it. Okay, we have to attack Big Mom now, but we can't. I know, but because they're, by the way, another thing about the Tenryubito is they are like the financial backers of the world government. It's their massive fortunes that were left over from their forefathers that really fund this whole operation. Not to say the Gorosei themselves are on a payroll, they might be, but you gotta worry about, paying the other people down the line. You have to make sure the money keeps flowing. Considering, once again, as I stated, they're in charge of the economy and everything. If the money becomes a little unstable, like, oh crap, the berry's value just dropped to 0. That might not be good for the structural integrity of our government, either literally or figuratively. So yeah, that's the relationship between them. Now, moving on to their physical power. I think we all feel like during the latter stages of One Piece, the Gorosei are going to play a much bigger role, which I think that is definitely going to be the case. I think at some point later on down the line, maybe just, it's Oda's, this is not the time for this yet, okay? But I think sometime way later down the line, Oda is going to reveal their actual names. He's going to reveal the significance of the Gorosei, where they came from. Why are they the ones that are in charge? How does the Gorosei system work? I'm sure Oda's going to explain all of that. But with that, them being thrust into a more active role into the story, I think we all have this awesome scene where, like, Luffy barges into Marie Joie, and the Gorosei are there, and, like, they all take off their shirts, and they're all ripped, and they all have devil fruit powers, like, they're all mythical zone, you know, like, freaking ancient zone Logia users, the most powerful guys ever. Freaking Samurai Gandhi takes out his sword and just slices the red line in half. Like, I'm sure there's some of you that actually think that might go down. From what we've seen so far, that's just, I don't know. And I don't even, it's such a tough situation. I don't even really feel comfortable in giving, like, a percentage on that right now. I don't even really feel comfortable really even entertaining that. I could see it going either way. I could honestly see it going where the rest of the story plays out and Luffy and the Straw Hats never even encounter them. I could see that as possible. I could see, like, the end of the world government, everything collapsing, Dragon's Revolution is nigh, and the Gorosei decide to bail, or they decide to go down with the ship. Because they are smart. They are not like the Tenryubito that probably are like cowards that run from the furthest, you know. These guys have to have that drive. They have to have that fighting instinct to stand their ground. These are not cowards. These are not, you know, faceless people that just don't know what they're doing. They know about everything going on in the world. They are the heads of this network, about the cipher pulls and the Marines. They know they know where to go, and they know who to send, and how to take care of everything, and how to maintain the integrity of the world government. They've managed it for this long, as I'm sure the predecessors of this current generation of Gorosei have managed it for this long. So they might seem like the kind of guys that if the world government's going down, they might choose to go down with the ship. I don't think they're the kind of guys that would turn coward at the last minute. But I definitely think that their significance is going to be shown. And just because, like, the Straw Hats themselves do not encounter them, that doesn't mean that they could be there could be a big standoff between them and Garp or Sengoku, or both. Or Sakazuki could finally, like, because Sakazuki basically threatened them at the end of their conversation. Sakazuki basically said, you know, if this bullshit happens again, you know, and he just kind of like ... because Sakazuki he's absolute justice. He's a very straightforward kind of lava guy. You know, he's like, I don't like the fact that you're going behind my back. I don't like the fact that you basically cater to the whims of the Tenryubito just because they have the money, just because they have this invisible phantom power. You know, I hate that. You know, Sakazuki's very true blue in that respect, or I guess true red given his color scheme. So, Sakazuki, you know, next time the Gorosei probably do something along those lines, kind of like a government cover-up, like what happened with Alabasta and Luffy not defeating Crocodile. It was actually Smoker. Yeah, fake news. Yeah, next time that goes down and Sakazuki learns about it, I think he might actually snap. You know, there could be an assassination plot with the Gorosei. That could be something too. Who knows? But for right now, they are basically just the powers that be. 5 dudes in a room on a couch, which I imagine is a very comfortable couch, in front of a coffee table, sipping tea, that have, for all intensive purposes, absolute power over the entire world. It's symbolism, it's representation. The 5 elder stars. And if you haven't noticed it, I mean, I'll point it out right now. The world government symbol right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 circles. Yeah. So that's what they are right now, and that's really all I feel comfortable talking about right now. You know, maybe later on in the story when we find out a little bit more about them, I'll, you know, maybe expand upon, like, okay, I feel more comfortable about this theory right now. But for right now, I think as just an introduction to the Gorosei and what they're all about, that's a pretty good one. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you have a great night. Tekking101 signing out. Later, everybody.